Most people do not decide how much to respect you by listening to what you say. They decide it by watching what happens when you feel pressure. A joke aimed at your insecurity. A tone that becomes slightly colder. A delay meant to make you doubt yourself. A challenge designed to see whether you fold, explain, chase, or lose your center. And if you fail these moments too often, people stop seeing confidence in you, even if you keep trying to look strong. One of the darkest truths about human nature is this. People do not only observe your value, they test it, not always openly, not always consciously, not always with cruel intentions, but constantly. They test your boundaries. They test your emotional control. They test how easily you can be shaken. They test whether you need approval more than self-respect. They test whether your confidence is real or only visible when the room is soft. That is what makes confidence so important, because confidence is not proved in comfort. It is revealed in friction. Anyone can look composed when they are admired. Anyone can sound wise when no one is pushing back. Anyone can seem calm when nothing is being risked. But the moment tension appears, people start measuring something deeper. They want to know, do you collapse? Do you overexplain? Do you become defensive? Do you chase? Do you lose emotional shape the moment pressure enters a room? That is where respect begins. Not in your image, in your response. In this video, I'm going to break down 7 psychological ways people test your confidence before they respect you, and how to protect your value before small tests turn into open disrespect. Before we begin, comment this below. I stay solid. Because once people realize they cannot shake your center easily, they begin relating to you differently. The first lesson is simple. People rarely test confidence with obvious confrontation at the beginning. They test it with small discomforts, a delayed answer, a dismissive tone, a slight interruption, a joke that feels just sharp enough to make you notice, a moment of indifference where warmth used to exist, a subtle challenge in front of others. These things matter more than most people realize, because they are not always random. Often, they are measurements of your internal stability. Will you overreact? Will you shrink? Will you become needy? Will you try too hard to recover the atmosphere? Will you betray your own tension just to keep the room easy? That is what the other person is learning. This is why many intelligent people miss the first stage of being tested. The signals are too small to justify a dramatic reaction, too subtle to prove, too deniable to challenge easily. And that is exactly why they work. Because the real point is not the event itself. The point is what the event pulls out of you. A test is successful when it reveals your pressure pattern. Do you get anxious? Do you become overly nice? Do you start explaining? Do you go quiet in a weak way? Do you begin performing for reacceptance? That information is social gold. Because once people know what discomfort does to you, they know how much weight your confidence actually carries. This is why confidence begins in those small moments, not in speeches, not in self-image, not in how strong you feel alone, but in the tiny moments where pressure tries to move your shape. The second lesson is deeper. Before people challenge your strength physically, socially, or openly, they usually challenge you emotionally. This is where hidden power dynamics start. Someone changes their warmth and waits to see if you chase it. Someone becomes distant and watches whether you become insecure. Someone throws a careless comment and studies whether you lose your center. Someone withholds enthusiasm and observes whether your confidence begins collapsing. That is not accidental. People test emotional steadiness because emotional steadiness predicts so much else. If you cannot control your need for reassurance, you become easy to move. If you cannot tolerate ambiguity, you become easy to bait. If you need quick emotional recovery from others, your power becomes conditional. This is why confidence is not only about how you feel, it is about how much of your state belongs to you. A person who is easily emotionally redirected will always feel weaker to others than a person whose center stays intact under tension. This is why some people keep getting tested more than others, not because they deserve it, but because they leak emotional vulnerability faster. Their face changes too quickly. Their tone changes too quickly. Their behavior becomes eager too quickly. Their need for things to feel okay becomes too visible. And once that becomes visible, the room learns something. This person can be moved. That is dangerous. Because once someone can be moved easily, they can be managed more easily too. This is why calm people feel stronger than reactive people even before they say much. Calmness tells a room, you don't get instant access to my state. And that alone makes people more careful. The third lesson is brutal. People often decide your level by watching how you handle low-grade disrespect. Not dramatic humiliation, not extreme betrayal, small disrespect. The kind many people tell themselves to ignore. A dismissive joke, a condescending tone, an unnecessary correction in front of others, a shift in energy that feels slightly superior, a move designed to see whether you will tolerate being lowered for the sake of peace. That is the test, because disrespect is rarely only about the disrespect itself. It is about the response it earns. If you collapse into awkward laughter, they learn something. If you become emotionally desperate to smooth it over, they learn something. If you get too aggressive too fast, they learn something. If you say nothing but your whole energy shrinks, they learn something. Every reaction teaches the room your level. This is why confidence is so visible. Not because confident people always win the moment, but because their response keeps their internal shape. They do not overdefend. They do not perform panic. They do not beg the room to repair their image. They do not abandon self-respect to maintain comfort. That changes status instantly, because people trust composure more than speech. Anyone can say they deserve respect, but the way you absorb, interrupt, correct, or disengage from low-level disrespect tells people whether your boundaries are real. That is why those moments matter so much. They are not little. They are social interviews. The fourth lesson is this. The more you need approval, the harder every confidence test becomes. Why? Because approval seeking creates internal conflict. Part of you wants dignity. Part of you wants acceptance. Part of you knows what happened. Part of you wants to pretend it was harmless. Part of you wants to stay centered. Part of you is terrified of losing connection, warmth, access, or social comfort. That split weakens response. Now, instead of reacting from clarity, you react from negotiation. You start thinking, maybe I shouldn't make this awkward. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I should just be chill. Maybe if I handle this perfectly, they'll still like me. That is dangerous. Because the moment your response starts being organized around staying liked, your confidence is no longer free. It becomes dependent. Dependent confidence always looks thinner. It feels hesitant, delayed, overmanaged, too careful. And people sense that. They sense when your self-respect is trying to survive inside a stronger need for approval. That is why approval seeking makes testing easier. Because all the other person has to do is create enough tension that your desire to stay accepted becomes stronger than your desire to stay solid. Once that happens, you become easier to manage. This is why emotionally strong people are not always the loudest people. Often they are just the people who can tolerate being disliked without collapsing. That is rare, and rarity creates power, because the room quickly learns something important. This person cannot be socially bought as easily. The fifth lesson is one most people learn painfully. A lot of confidence tests are really tests of overexplaining. Someone questions your intention, misreads your tone, acts suspicious, throws a small accusation. Suddenly the pressure is on, and now the test begins. Do you stay centered, or do you immediately start explaining yourself in too much detail? This matters because overexplaining usually reveals one of two things: uncertainty or need. Uncertainty about your own ground, need for the other person to restore your image. Both lower your position. This is why a short challenge can create such a strong reaction in insecure people. It is not the content. It is the emotional pressure of being misunderstood. And when being misunderstood feels unbearable, confidence gets exposed quickly. Now you talk too much. You justify too much. You perform innocence. You try to control the perception instead of protecting your center. That is when people stop reading your confidence as real. Because real confidence does not need endless emotional labor to survive someone else's interpretation. It can clarify briefly, then it stays stable. That stability matters more than perfect wording. Because tests are rarely passed by brilliant speech. They are passed by emotional weight. The weight of someone who does not need immediate permission to remain internally intact. That is why strong people speak less under pressure. Not because they are hiding, because they understand that every extra sentence given from emotional need lowers the entire interaction. The sixth lesson is simple but powerful. Your weak reactions teach people how far they can go. This is why repeated testing happens. People push once, then they watch. If the reaction is soft in the wrong way, delayed, overly forgiving, or emotionally eager to smooth everything over, they push again. And again, not always because they are evil, because your response taught them the boundary has movement. That is where many people get trapped. They think every test is separate. It isn't. Most tests are connected. The second one exists because of what the first one taught. The third one exists because of what the second one confirmed. This is how patterns build, not in one moment, in repeated education. You are teaching people your emotional price. If the price is low, access gets careless. If the price is unclear, people keep checking. If the price is high but calm, most people begin adjusting. This is why emotional discipline matters so much. Not because you must react to everything, but because your pattern becomes your reputation. If your pattern is kind but solid, people feel that. If your pattern is nice but easy to shake, people feel that too, and the room changes accordingly. That is the hard truth. The world does not only listen to what you declare, it studies what your pattern permits. The seventh and final lesson is this. Calm correction creates more respect than loud strength. A lot of people think confidence means domination. It doesn't. Sometimes real confidence is a slower voice, shorter words, steadier eyes, a refusal to overperform emotion, a clean sentence that changes the atmosphere without turning into chaos. That is powerful because it proves your center is not borrowed from volume. It comes from structure. Someone says something off. You pause. You look at them. You say, "Let's not do that." Or, "I heard that." Or, say it clearly. Simple. No dramatic speech. No panic, no collapse, no nervous laughter. That kind of correction is unforgettable because it shows two things at once. You noticed and you remained intact. That combination commands respect. Not always love, not always comfort, but respect. And in dark psychology, that matters because people become very careful around those who cannot be easily moved out of shape, not because they are aggressive, because they are composed. And composure under pressure is one of the clearest social signals of real confidence. So, why do people test your confidence before they respect you? Because confidence is not measured in comfort. It is measured in friction. People test you through small discomforts, through emotional shifts, through low-grade disrespect, through approval pressure, through accusations that invite overexplaining, through repeated pushes that study your pattern, and through moments where calm correction is the only thing standing between your self-respect and your social decline. That is why confidence matters so much. Not as image, not as attitude, not as performance, but as emotional structure, the ability to remain yourself when the room changes. Because once people realize your center is not easy to move, the tests begin to fade. And where tests fade, respect often begins. If this video hit something real, comment below. I stay solid. And if you want more content on dark psychology, confidence, human behavior, emotional control, manipulation, and power dynamics, subscribe to DarkPsyframe. Because respect does not begin when people hear your words. It begins when they realize pressure doesn't easily break your shape.